I learned that in ancient Rome, they believed that eyelashes fell out from an excessive amount of sex, so women would use cosmetics to make their eyelashes look fuller to demonstrate their chastity.
This is Mind-Blowing Photographs Part 20. This is the official Marine photograph of Bernice Frankel. She was one of the first members of the Women's Reserve in 1943. But you know Bernice by her stage name, B. Arthur. This is the Statue of Liberty under construction in France in 1884. And here's another picture of it just because I think it's cool. Flora Stewart of Londonderry, New Hampshire was 117 years old when this photo was taken on November 5th, 1867. Her exact birth year is unknown, but would be around 1750 if her age in this image is correct. The site of the 1770 Boston Massacre photographed between 1850 and 1870. And here's that site today. This is Maud Wagner pictured in 1907. She was the first known female tattoo artist in the United States. This is Michelangelo's shopping list from 1518. His servant couldn't read, so he sketched out what he needed. This is Teddy Roosevelt's diary entry from February 14th, 1884. On that day, his mom and his wife died within hours of each other. A photograph of the 369th Infantry Regiment, known as the Harlem Hellfighters. They were called this because of how hard they fought in battle. This young girl, pictured with her family, would grow up to become the first woman of color, first Hispanic, and first Latina member of the United States Supreme Court. And last but not least, we have a young woman working as a mechanic during World War II. And believe it or not, you know her too. Thanks for watching. Stick around for more.
Animals that accidentally changed the course of history. King Alexander of Greece got attacked by a disrespectful monkey and died from a severe infection. After his death, his father Constantine came back to rule Greece, and he led the country into the Greco-Turkish War, which had a body count of 250,000. The actions of one monkey ended up clapping 250,000 people. One day in Chicago, a cow accidentally knocked over a lighted lantern. This ended up causing the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, which blazed for 3 days and roasted 300 people into oblivion. It also left over 100,000 people homeless. Chicago gangs do be putting in work, but they will never equal or surpass the carnage caused by a cow with no awareness. A long time ago, the Romans had major beef with the Saanan Celts. The Celts decided to hand deliver the smoke and planned on ambushing the Roman army and violating them in their sleep. The Roman guard dogs weren't guarding or dogging because they fell asleep, but they were saved by something else. The Celts accidentally disturbed an army of geese which hissed and honked at them. The Romans woke up and took the W, which would have never happened if geese didn't literally wake up and choose violence.
Royal palaces were so filthy that kings and queens were often dirtier than peasants. You see, royal courts were sort of like music festivals, you know, really fun, but like a lot of people partying in one place at one time. But unlike a music festival, they never stopped, and castles didn't have plumbing. And on top of that, they thought that baths were bad for your health. This is King Louis XIV. He bathed twice. Not per week, not per month, just twice in his entire life. Now, peasants weren't exactly clean either, but at least they could avoid, you know, the mountains of poop and rotting food and horrific overcrowding that came with royal courts. These palaces were just so gross, guys. There were bugs like fleas and lice. Cooks would be naked in the kitchen. I'll spare you the details because I could go on forever on this.
You know what this is? Yeah, this is a condom, one of those things that your parents should have probably used. Now, I did research about the history of the condom, and it's pretty disgusting, so I thought I would tell you about it. Some of the earliest uses of a condom was in Greek mythology. There was this dude called King Minos of Crete, who basically cheated on his wife, so she cursed him, so every time he would bust a nut, scorpions and serpents would come out and kill whoever he was hooking up with. So the legend goes is that he used a goat's bladder to protect his wee-wee. Afterwards, Egyptians basically used these linen condoms to guard themselves against diseases. They also came in different colors to represent class status. Anyways, we as a species eventually moved on to using sheep intestines as condoms. Oh, hey, what's up, man? Hey, I gotta kill you, dude. Oh, that's a bummer. Tough month, you gotta feed the family. Yeah, something like that. You're horny, aren't you? Yeah, I'm horny.
So today's torture method is coming straight from the Roman Empire. So meet Tiberius. He was the second emperor of Rome, and he was a terrible person, just in general. Some of the awful things he did, he was terrible. But today we're going to be talking about just one of those terrible things. So good old Tiberius here would invite his enemies over to his house and, you know, force them to drink wine. He'd be like, hey, let's have a party here, go drink some nice wine. So yes, all of his enemies would be drinking and drinking for hours, and once they got their fill, Tiberius, by the way, all of his victims were male, would tie their genitals shut. So if you know male anatomy, you would know that tying their one main genital shut would inhibit their urination. So yeah, they would sit there at full bladders and he would just torture them, which is one of the worst feelings ever. God, I would hate this. Some died of an infection of not being able to empty their bladders. Sick.
Napoleon died 200 years ago today, but his penis lives on in New Jersey. After Napoleon died in exile on St. Helena, his doctor removed his penis during the autopsy and gave it to a priest to smuggle to Napoleon's hometown in Corsica. On the way, the priest was murdered as part of a blood vendetta, but he managed to get it to his family. They kept it safe until they sold it to a British collector in 1916. Then the collector sold it to a Philadelphia collector in 1926, and then it went on display at a New York museum for the French arts in 1927. Visitors could peer into a glass case containing it, but after 100 plus years, it wasn't very impressive. Time magazine said it looked like a maltreated strip of buckskin shoelace. Finally, in 1977, a professor from Columbia, John Latimer, bought it, and that is where it is today, inside a box in New Jersey.
These are 3 last-minute decisions that changed the course of history. Number 1, just before the Titanic set sail on its ill-fated maiden voyage, Second Officer David Blair made a last-minute decision to stay behind on shore. The move seemed inconsequential until it was discovered later that Blair had the only set of keys to the ship's binoculars. Number 2, after surviving an attempt on his life that left a number of civilians injured, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria headed to the hospital to visit the victim. Unfortunately, his driver made a wrong turn, leading him right into the path of his would-be assassin, Gavrilo Princip. Princip, not believing his luck, walked up to the Archduke and fired the shot that would spark World War I. Number 3, one of Germany's most skilled tacticians during World War II was a man named Erwin Rommel. Rommel was in charge of overseeing the defenses of Normandy. On a whim, he decided to leave his post and take his wife on vacation. That day turned out to be D-Day.
The Titanoboa was the largest snake in history, and it was absolutely terrifying. This monster snake ruled prehistoric Colombia around 60 million years ago. In 2012, they created an exhibit to show what the actual size of these snakes looked like. Paleontologists estimated them to grow up to 49 feet, weighing up to 2,500 pounds. Experts believe that their main prey were large turtles and crocodiles.
Sugar on grits? Nope. Grits. Let me break it down. First, what are grits? Corn, processed and milled. So why doesn't sugar go on grits? Let's go back to 8700 BCE, when grits were actually called grist. Grist was a corn dish by the Muskogee tribe that they gave to British colonists. The indigenous people used it as trade with the settlers for goods and services. When it made its way to plantations, slave owners used to ration it to southern slaves. Because their rations weren't enough, slaves used to also gather shrimp in nearby creeks, unbeknownst to slave owners. Shrimp and grits, one of the first true southern grit dishes, dates all the way back to the Gullah Geechee people. They were descendants of slaves from West Africa. So where did sugar and grits come from? The devil.
But the battalion surgeon is firing his weapon in combat. Something's gone wrong. And in July of 44 on the island of Saipan, that's exactly what happened. Japan had just launched the largest banzai attack of the war, with 4,000 men rushing into the American lines and overrunning multiple positions. Captain Ben Solomon, a dentist, had volunteered as the battalion surgeon. And when the attack kicked off, he was in his aid station, close to the front. As the tent filled with casualties, Solomon saw a Japanese soldier bayonet a wounded American waiting outside. After shooting that attacker, he noticed more, crawling under the tent from every side. He shot a few more, bayoneted another, and ordered the wounded to evacuate. He then went outside and manned a machine gun to help face down the Japanese attack. Solomon was found in the morning. He was killed manning the machine gun, with over 76 bullet and bayonet wounds across his body. But in front of his position lay 98 dead enemy soldiers. For his brave actions that day, Captain Ben Solomon would be awarded posthumously the Medal of Honor.
Currently, right now, I am doing research on the Black and Pink Triangle and the reclamation of them after the Holocaust. But today I got the chance to examine an actual pink triangle patch.
And I've started to realize that a lot of people don't actually know about the pink triangle.
The pink triangle was used to label gay men and trans women in the Holocaust. It is theorized that it was possibly used against a few gay women, too. Under paragraph 175, homosexuality was made illegal in Germany. And in 1936, the Gestapo established an office to investigate homosexual men and homosexual women. Around 50,000 German men were convicted under paragraph 175. And anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 German gay men were put into Nazi concentration camps. Gay men were treated horribly in concentration camps and made to do some of the worst jobs. And even after World War II had ended, they were not given any justice. In fact, many gay men were imprisoned after the war. Later in the 1960s and 70s, gay men would reclaim the pink triangle.
This is the story of Hypatia, one of the greatest geniuses of the classical antiquity, and she was killed by Christianity. Hypatia was raised by her father, Theon, a Greek mathematician. She grew up to be the head of the Platonic school. She refined scientific instruments and even wrote math books. Hypatia taught Jews, Christians, atheists, and pagans it didn't matter your religion as long as you had a divine thirst for knowledge. Hypatia taught her students that the universe was rational, ordered, and mathematical. She even taught that mathematics had a spiritual element and was the language of existence. Her downfall came when Christianity became the state religion. The Christians accused her of worshiping the devil and doing witchcraft because she was too smart. An angry Christian mob dragged her body through the street, peeling her skin off, killing her, and burning the remains. Her death shocked the empire and brought an end to the classical era. After her death, no intellectuals dared stood up to Christianity again.
Who murdered Lord Darnley? In 1567, the Kirk of Field exploded in downtown Edinburgh, but that's not what killed the second husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. Darnley was a hated bisexual syphilitic recovering when kegs of gunpowder obliterated his home, but his naked body was found far away at an orchard, completely unharmed by the explosion and strangled to death. Mary and her lover Lord Bothwell are obvious suspects, but they were away at a wedding. They do get more suspicious because they got married 3 months later, but why an explosion? Queen Elizabeth used the assassination as a pretext to imprison Mary for 19 years, something Mary would have known. Why not just quietly kill him, especially since the explosion seems like just a distraction to strangle him? And even if Mary were behind the killing, why not just let the syphilis kill him? But who actually killed him? Like, who strangled him?